Welcome to the Career Advantage Show, where we help you reclaim your career power and design your working life on your terms. I'm Tony Piscinelli, and each week I sit down with leaders who have faced career-defining moments, such as a devastating job loss, burnout, stagnation, or even workplace harassment, and been able to turn these difficult circumstances into powerful and greater opportunities. All right, today I'm joined by Peter Wright, who is a speaker, writer, and a podcast host who currently lives in Canada. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you for the opportunity to being here.
Yes, I know you've got a rich background in both corporate, farming, and also all sorts of things. So today's a one opportunity for you to share your story, particularly around the adverse circumstances that have occurred to you and how you bounce back from that. And hopefully for our audience who are going through their own adversity or have gone through that, let's say job loss, or they're burnt out, or they just had enough of that world, how they can draw on the lessons that you came up for yourself as a result of your own challenges through life. So, Peter, do you just want to just share, you did spend some time as a corporate marketing executive, correct?
Absolutely, yes, I did.
And obviously you learnt a lot about how to promote yourself and sell and everything. What was the biggest learning from your time in the corporate world?
The biggest learning, and this is not a sarcastic answer, is that I didn't belong in the corporate world. But having said that, I did pick up a lot of very valuable skills, management skills, accounting skills, budgeting skills, which were very valuable when I started my own business and then went farming after that.
Okay, yes. Was your departure from corporate world something of your own choosing, Peter, or was it something forced upon you?
It was my own choosing, with some influence, if you like. I worked for a very large corporation. I worked for one of the divisions, and the corporation was the result of a merger of two very big conglomerates in South Africa, and I was in the one that was essentially taken over, and the culture changed quite a lot. And I was a marketing guy in a very production and accounting oriented business where they really thought marketing people were on a different planet. So I got a good promotion over a period, and then I knew that I'd hit that glass ceiling. There's no way I was going to get any further as a marketing guy. And I was disenchanted with the whole corporate thing. I was feeling burnout and everything else. So I had an opportunity to join a partnership, which was an export trading house exporting to various countries in Africa. So when that opportunity arose, I was already thinking of leaving. I did it. That opportunity didn't turn out too well, but that gave me the momentum to start my own export trading house, which I did.
Right. So basically, you're saying your job loss was more of an opportunity than a devastating event. You'd been
Yes,
tinkering with the
that was
idea
not
of leaving.
sure. That was not devastating at all. I'd been thinking about it.
Okay. Were you fully prepared, or in hindsight, if you went back to that, would you have said, "I maybe would have put a few foundations in place"?
Yeah. Yes, with hindsight, I think so. But if you wait to put too many foundations in, you can wait forever. That's the other side of it, right? So the devastating bit came later when, after 4 years on my own with this export trading business, having done really, really well, my civil war broke out in my two major markets, and within weeks, my whole business crumbled because I worked on a bank overdraft. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cargo on the ships going up north and on trucks on the road, some of which I salvaged, most I didn't. And I ended up going bankrupt because I'd personally guaranteed everything. I went bankrupt, and I walked out of that without even a car. The only car I salvaged, I gave to my ex-wife. I also was going through a divorce at the same time. And that was devastating. Couldn't sell my property because things had changed politically in South Africa, and squatters were moving into where I lived on a country estate. And that was the second time. When I left Rhodesia, I couldn't sell my property because the situation. I gave the keys to the bank, a very small mortgage. South Africa, same, and went to Zimbabwe where my brother was still, and he said it's fairly stable. Come back, and I started yet another business. Worked for him for a while, started another business, and then went farming. So that was my first go around of a devastating loss, and that was quite hard to get over, but I did. And we can talk more about some of the lessons I learned, but the real crunch was the farming political fiasco or chaos in Zimbabwe.
But before we get to that, Peter, in terms of lifting yourself out of that devastation of bankruptcy, did you seek counsel or advice or mentoring? How did you work your mentally out of that situation?
I'd I'd been an active runner, not at school. I was pretty hopeless at school sports. I played rugby, of course, but apart from that, I was much more interested in equine sports. I had horses as a kid, played polo cross, bit of polo. But in my mid-30s in the corporate world, I started running. And then I got the bug and I started running marathons, and I started running ultra marathons, 50 milers, 80 kilometers. And it's fairly tough to do that. And the big lesson I learned from that is no matter how tired you are, you can take one more pace. So when I was feeling really run down on the marathon, I think, let me just run one more pace. And then when I did that, I say, let me run to the next telegraph pole. I never thought about the finish, right? Let me run to the next electricity pole, telephone pole, that bush up there, little steps, little steps. And suddenly those little steps mount up to 50 miles and you've done it. There's the finish line. You've done it. So when I was going through all this business and emotional and turmoil, I kept thinking back to that. And I said, at the age of 40, you were running 50-mile ultra marathons. If you can do that, you can survive this, right? And that was a big thing, tying the physical achievement into using that to overcome the emotional and mental hurdles.
One step at a time.
That's it.
Perfect. All right, let's take you into that farm situation and how you lost that and what was the aftermath, Peter. Do you want to just go into that story for us?
Sure. So having got back to Zimbabwe, this would be in the early to mid-90s. I'd been divorced for a couple of years. I met a woman that I'd known as a kid, and I'd known as a teenager, and I'd known as a young adult, and we never really got together for all sorts of reasons. And she was recently divorced, and she was living on a farm, which had been her family farm, where her parents had bought it just after she was born. So we took over the farm. Her mother died, her father was quite sick, and we developed it into a thriving little horticultural production operation where we employed 180 people in summer, and we exported peas and granadillas and a few other things to Europe for hard currency. It was going well. It was a bit of a struggle because the farm needed a lot of development and we didn't have a lot of capital. I'd sold my business that I'd started in Zimbabwe to finance that. And then in the year 2000, the politics changed completely. And the government decided they didn't want any more white farmers. They need trying to appease the very poor indigenous population. So they started transporting in trucks hundreds or thousands of tribal people onto the white-owned farms. And these people couldn't survive. The only way they could survive is by stealing off the farm owner. So the intimidation, we went through 3 years of intimidation, death threats, and the government ordered us to leave the farm. And after 3 years, we were the second last farm still operating in a district of formerly 43 farms. And the police tried 3 times to arrest me, to get me off the farm. And they got me on the third time, put me in jail for 3 days and 3 nights under really bad conditions. And I never went back to my home again. They let me out after 3 days on condition I didn't go back home. So Sue, my partner, had 3 days to move all our personal stuff off the farm. A lot of stuff had been stolen. I'd managed to get a little bit of equipment off beforehand, but we lost our crops. We'd been locked into our security fence for days at a time by a mob of government supporters threatening to kill us. And we moved what we could salvage. We moved to my mother. My mother had moved to England, but to the cottage she used to live in on my brother's place. So when I got out of the prison, the police cells, I got back to the cottage and there's all the contents of a 4-bedroom farmhouse spread on the lawn of this tiny little 2-bedroom cottage. And what I could salvage of my fertilizer and farm chemicals and equipment strewn all over the place. And my first thought was, how are we going to survive without all this stuff? That's all I could think about. What are we going to do? We were 54 at the time. Inflation there was running in the thousands of percent. It was even worse than Germany after World War One. So we had to sell everything we could to survive, paid off our bank loan, and my eldest son had moved to Canada in a few years before, and he said, come and look at Canada. We had no money. We would have liked to come to your country, but at our age and with skills that weren't in demand, we would have had to put up a huge bond, and we couldn't do that. We couldn't go to America because we couldn't afford a lawyer or green card. So we came to Canada, and I had to take a job as a farm laborer doing work that I used to pay people to do and working longer hours and under worse conditions than any of my black guys in Africa ever worked. So talk about pride before a fall. That was a real wake-up call. But we survived, and I'm still here 20 years later.
So certainly you've hit rock bottom, Peter, a number of times.
Yeah.
3 days and 3 nights in prison seems like a short time, relatively speaking. But what were some of the thoughts going through your head? I just couldn't even contemplate the thought of going into prison, to be honest.
Well, the start was when they arrested me, they interrogated me for 5 hours. They were trying to find something to pin on me. So they accused me of being trying to overthrow the government. They accused me of collecting arms of war. We all had guns. I had licenses for my gun. They dragged me back to the farm and searched the farm, confiscated my guns and licenses, which my wife got back the next day. They couldn't pin that on me. But I thought they were going to beat me up. And a lot of farmers did get severely, brutally attacked and beaten up. A lot were murdered. They didn't, but I had 5 security policemen in a little room threatening to beat me up and accusing me of all these things. And I managed to hold my ground there. But then they shoved me in the cell. It was 12 foot by 12 foot. And in one night, there were 27 of us in that cell. You couldn't lie down. There were so many, and I was the only white guy. And I thought that they were going to come back and either kill me or sort me out because, as I say, many farmers been murdered. They didn't. Conditions were not good, but the black guys were fine. They were really helpful. They asked my advice. I had to be careful because the police used to put plants in the cell to try and get you to incriminate yourself. And I got through it by playing a game. So we weren't allowed to smoke in the cell, but everyone smoked. So I smuggled a whole lot of cigarettes in my jacket, gave all these other guys cigarettes, and we smoked away. And I kept demanding stuff from the police. I said, I've got to be allowed to clean my teeth in the morning. I didn't have a toothbrush, but they took me to a garden tap outside and I could, get some water and rinse my mouth out. And then I kept demanding this and that. And the next thing, and every time they gave in, I said, well, I've got a point. I've got to, and that was it. I turned it into a game and I let my anger at the injustice and what was happening to the country, that prevented me from being paralyzed by fear. That anger helped. So, and then I kept thinking back, as I said earlier, to the marathon, thinking, well, I got through the marathon 1 step and 1 kilometer at a time. I can get through this at an hour at a time. So I just focused on getting through the next hour. And,
Peter,
and I did.
Would you say going through these setbacks, devastating events, are actually battle hardening you for life? You become you come out a tougher individual.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And here in Canada, which is a fairly peaceful, although it's changing very rapidly recently, people tell me, oh, we're so concerned about this, that, and the next thing. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. You've got nothing to worry about. You're living a sheltered life. Believe me, I know what it's like to have things to worry about. People worry here because they can't get a new car this year. They've got to wait till next year, and they can't get a bigger TV, and they can't afford a ticket to the football game. Get some perspective on life because you can lose everything like that, and you're worrying about nothing.
Yes,
So, yes,
we can lose ourselves in the materiality of life, can't we?
yeah, absolutely.
All right. So today, if you would like to share with our audience what you do as a podcast host,
Sure. So before COVID and the lockdown, I was doing quite a bit of public speaking and some internet marketing. And then, of course, when that came, public speaking just stopped completely. So I had a business partner in another business venture, a woman, younger woman, and we said, let's start a podcast. So we did. And we initially started to help out other small businessmen who'd lost the ability to network and, all these events we used to go to. We didn't get a lot of traction on the business side. So we switched to health and wellness about 2 years ago. And then we rebranded to, we call it Health Declassified. It's all about holistic health. So we interview guests once every 2 weeks. And then we do a wrap-up episode every week, just the two of us. We pick a health topic and we research it and we explore it. And then we talk about it on the show. So that's what we do.
All right. And obviously are an author and you've got your book there over your right shoulder.
I wrote a book. It's on the back. You can see it there, and I have it here. It's called 5 Steps to Thriving on Adversity. The reason that I wrote the book is when I was doing the public speaking, that everyone kept saying, wherever I went, you got to write a book, got to write a book. So I did. I wrote a book. And I mainly sell it when I do a speech. People at church asked me for the book. It's not on Amazon. I had it listed and they dropped it, presumably because I didn't let them do the facilitation. I wanted to distribute it myself. I don't know, whatever. But it's on my website, peterwrightsblog.com. It has its own website, 5stepstothriving.com. Or people can email me at peter@Health Declassified, and I can do that. That's the background to the book. And it's what it is a whole lot of stories of my life, but there's 5 steps to how I thrived on the adversities I've been through, illustrated by a couple of stories from my life. It's all in there.
Okay, all right. Well, you've given the details of where people can find that and find you. So if anyone there is listening or watching today, then they've got the opportunity to reach out to you because
Sure.
Obviously you've gone through a hard road and you've come through the other side, Peter, to tell the stories.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful that people say, what would you change? I say nothing, because as tough as some of those parts were, I wouldn't be where I am now, physically, emotionally. And I had a heart attack a few years ago, got through that as well. And it just helped me get through everything else in life, right?
Yes, it's everything, as I see, is a bit of an apprenticeship for us to become stronger figures in life.
Yeah. And if you look at some of the most successful people, most of them have been through some unusual level of adversity.
True. Yes. Challenge is what makes us grow in life.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thanks for joining us, Peter, and hope people want to reach out to you. They've got the details. So by all means, reach out to Peter. He's a wealth of experience and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks for tuning into the Career Advantage Show. Visit the careeradvantage.show to subscribe and claim your free Career Confidential Toolkit. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I'd truly appreciate a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. And don't forget to share it with your friends and colleagues who might need a little career inspiration.